Good day, folks. I'm beaming your way from scenic Duluth, Minnesota. Let me show you around. If you look over my left shoulder, you'll see Lake Superior. That's the largest freshwater lake in the whole world. There's Bob Dylan's childhood home over my right shoulder. The Zimmerman family occupied the second story of that unassuming duplex from 1941 to 1948. And if you really strain your eyes, you'll see the abandoned Paul Robeson Ballroom down on East First Street, perhaps named in anticipation of Robeson's arrival during his controversial singing tour of 1947.
Hey, Alex, we can't see you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Well, hey, maybe some other time. How about later today, I point the telephoto out of the window and take some pictures for you to splice into this bad boy. Well then, I'm pleased to say that EOR 43.2 for fall 2022 will hit your actual and virtual mailboxes in mid-September. I really like this issue, and I'm hoping you'll weigh in with your responses. Do drop me a line after you've read it, please. We're only running one critical essay this time, but it's a doozy. All the way from Mainz, Germany, Gerhard Bleifuss weighs in with a provocative reading of the Hairy Ape. Yank in that play, Gerhard speculates, is O'Neill's response to the futurism of Tommaso Marinetti, as expounded in the feculent Manifesto of Futurism from the year 1909. All that steel, all that speed, violence, and misogyny. That's what made Marinetti's proto-fascist futurists belong, writes Bleifuss. Lacking hard evidence that O'Neill read the manifesto, but getting pretty darn close, Bleifuss wisely presents his findings as speculative. But I think the essay is consistently persuasive. Yang's contempt for Patty seems realer than ever, sharpened by a precise focal point that we previously lacked. This essay will raise some Qs for some As, but it's a QED for ADP, and that's me. Doozy also suits the 8 letters that former Provincetown player Kyra Markham wrote to O'Neill's biographer, Louis Schaefer, in 1963, after Markham had established herself as a painter and expatriated to Haiti. Markham is nothing if not candid, and I'm pretty sure that this is a first ever EOR entry that might have fared well in a higher brow version of People magazine. One prominent player made pornographic sculptures. One occasional interloper was loud and vulgar, another a revolting, white-looking grub. One well-known actress was a homely woman with a badly pockmarked face, often drunk. Another was so filthy I could not imagine any man wanting to go to bed with her. An occasional player wore underwear so filthy, a key word here, I guess, that Markham felt obliged to buy her a fresh set. And Jig Cook once told Markham that he and she would have gotten on better if they'd had an affair. Susan Glaspell's fatuous devotion to Cook was something I never understood, Markham writes. Kind of have to give her credit for that one in context. Markham manages to be caustic without seeming crabbed or bitter. Her love and admiration for Mary Pine and Romany Marie in particular more than counterbalance the opprobrium she doles out elsewhere. She's a personable and an engaging writer, and witnessing her burgeoning trust in the magnetic Schaefer is fascinating, as is tracking her increasingly ominous references to the ascendancy of Papa Doc Duvalier. These letters are essential reading for any student of the Provincetown Player, so quite naturally, Jeff Kennedy provided a learned and readable introduction and equally helpful endnotes. Thanks, Jeff. And we're all counting down to your book next year, right? The indefatigable David Palmer has overhauled the used book feature. In his reappraisal of Joel Pfister's Stage and Depth, O'Neill and the Politics of Psychological Discourse from way back in 1995. From now on, used book entries will be longer and more detailed. David has set the bar high, or long, or maybe Yank or Patty. The practitioner's colloquium and to glance ahead at performance reviews will make some readers wonder why we don't style ourselves the Eric Fraser Hayes Review. We're working on that, but dang, corporate rebuilding is expensive. As Beth Weinster points out in her introduction to her and Eric's chat about their real-live Dow House production of Welded, Eric has spent the pandemic immersed in live and filmed productions of O'Neill. Their conversation is instructive as well as lively. I, at least, feel like I understand this difficult and frankly off-putting play better than I had previously done. The egos of the characters seem more human and hurt, less brazen. Evidently, a filmed version is in the works too, so stay tuned. That's it for me. More in 6 months. Maybe from Minnesota, maybe not. Now on to Mio Fratello, Zander Brietzke, book review editor of Record.
Thank you very much, Alex. We have two books this time in the review, two books that are not specifically about Eugene O'Neill, but relate very much to him. And they're both books I think our readers will like very much. The first is Patrick Chura's Mike Gold, The People's Writer from SUNY Press in 2020. That is reviewed by David Rozelle, who is a Mike Gold scholar, in addition to being an editor of a book called Progressive Stages, and also a recent author of a book on the Romantic poet Byron. So he covers a lot of ground, and his review displays those Catholic interests as well. Our second book is from our performance editor, Bess.rowen. Her book, The Lines Between the Lines, How Stage Directions Affect Embodiment. Also, that's University of Michigan Press, 2021, and it is reviewed by award-winning author Jennifer Buckley, her book, Beyond Text, and also from University of Michigan Press, and she gives a really terrific review of Bess's book on stage directions, which I'll talk about in a second. Mike Gold is probably familiar to our O'Neill readers. He was a contemporary of O'Neill's, mainly in fiction, also a newspaper writer and columnist. Unlike O'Neill, he was politically committed, a lifelong communist, wrote for the paper The Daily Worker, famous for his book Jews Without Money, which is one of the great titles in American literature. He was friends with O'Neill. If you familiar, and when you look at O'Neill's selected letters, Breyer and Bogard's collection, there are several correspondences between Gold and O'Neill, and there's a friendship and kinship between them. Gold was the early boyfriend of Dorothy Day, who, of course, was an early friend of O'Neill's from the Greenwich Village days. He wanted to marry her. She refused. She founded the Catholic Worker. He did the Daily Worker. So they went on that way, and they're separate ways. And eventually, Gold and O'Neill had a bit of a falling out. Gold's political concerns did not really line up so much with O'Neill's. Gold had choice things to say, for example, about The Iceman Cometh, saying you didn't even need to see it to know what was wrong with it. And I don't think he did see it. And O'Neill and he did not remain friends. But the relationship between the two is nevertheless interesting, and Gold's fervent commitment to politics and making the world a better place, and in fact changing the world, is a good mirror or reflection in maybe what O'Neill was doing, which was maybe not necessarily trying to change the world, but maybe doing some other things. So I think it'd be very interesting. I think the book is interesting in that respect as well. Bess's book, turning to The Lines Between the Lines, I have two takes on that. Certainly Jen Buckley is going to pick up on those in the review, but I'll do my shout out for a work and what it does for O'Neill studies. First of which is making O'Neill kind of cool, and doing that unself-consciously by putting O'Neill in the context and in the company of contemporary writers, Sarah Ruhl, Paula Vogel, Terrell Alvin McCraney, Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, Tracy Letts, We're used to seeing O'Neill in the company of the Provincetown Players and maybe later comparisons to Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams. But now he's in the company of these contemporary playwrights. And, I was kind of reminded as I was reading, I mean, it could be that readers of the Lines Between the Lines are maybe encountering O'Neill for the first time and maybe thinking, oh, I should look at this guy. And that is a real accomplishment, I think, and that's very important for what we're trying to do. The second thing is that we're used to O'Neill talking about O'Neill's stage directions in the sense that they assert authorial control, or that they are novelistic in design, and O'Neill trying to play all the parts. Bess has a very different take on that, and that being that these elaborate stage directions provide opportunities for contemporary interpreters, designers, directors, actors, to see the plays and envision things in the plays that O'Neill could not have anticipated or predicted or even advocated when he wrote them. And in this sense, it makes O'Neill, again, our contemporary, and points to ways that O'Neill might be interpreted in now and in the future in new and exciting ways that will continue to invite audiences to attend and inspire audiences to read. And that is a tremendous gift. And with that said, I will now pass my baton off to Bess, who has a lot to say about performance and what's up next. Bess?
Thank you so much, Zander. I am so honored to have my work covered in this journal that I care so much about, and to hear what O'Neillians have to say about my the way that I deal with O'Neill in that book. So thank you very much for that. But this is not about me. It is time to move on to a great number of performance reviews that we have. Whereas the last couple of issues, we have been kept gloriously busy by Alex Rose Productions at the Metropolitan Playhouse. This issue, we have a new playhouse and director keeping us happily occupied, and that is Eric Fraser Hayes at Dow House. So 4 of these 6 reviews are actually about Dow House Productions, which is really wonderful and gives us a nice snapshot of the cool work that's happening and that Hayes is directing over in Danville. So we begin with Marla Del Collins's review of a series called The Ghosts of Dow House, which was something that Eric thought up and has these wonderful character studies in it of these, I don't want to say minor characters, but some are more major than not, from various O'Neill plays over time, filmed at various locations around Dow House. And they're little kind of moments that take the plays as a departure to learn more about these characters. So there are a series of YouTube films. They're short and they're all available there. And so they came out over a period of months. Marla was nice enough to cover all of them for us so that we can get a really nice arc of what the whole series looks like. So I think that she does that admirably. And also I recommend watching The Ghosts. They're a lot of fun. And it also gives us a chance to think about, what does it mean to have ghosts of Dow House? Who's been there? What characters have lived there? And what are they doing as they watch us from the halls and fields and all of the places around? We next move on to Beyond the Horizon, which is a really exciting production that Dow House did, both in a live version and also in a filmed version that was released later. So it's really exciting that we have a review of the live performance and the filmed performance in the same issue. So you can really see the differences between not just how 2 reviewers encounter this piece, but also the differences between sitting in a live audience for this and seeing a filmed version. So Eileen Herman covers the live production and William Davies King covers the filmed production. Both of them are very interested in the fact that this production is very kind to Ruth, who is a character who does not often get kindness. And she appears to both of them to be a little softer, and that this is overall a more sympathetic production to her, a little less Ethan Frome than it can come off in other ways. So that's really interesting, and again shows Eric's commitment to fresh takes on these O'Neill pieces while still being true to the core of what they are. On that theme, we move on to Dan McGovern's wonderful review of Welded. And he begins that review by quoting the New York Times's review of Jose Quintero's production of Welded, that basically said it was a truly terrible play, and there was kind of nothing redeeming about the play itself. McGovern then goes on to say that that's not really true. This production was actually, the Dow House production shows us that there's something really interesting in there, and it made the play seem really fresh and interesting once again. So it's really nice to, again, have that context. Things change. A fresh production can change your mind about a piece that you thought would never work. And then we move on. We move away from Dow House, unfortunately, but fortunately to other fun places around the country. Alex Pettit, our very own, reviewing The Hairy Ape in Texas. And this production seems like it was really interesting, particularly for an edition that I think was meant to really draw in Gen Z, which is a cool idea for O'Neill. And apparently this production added a bunch of sea shanties, which for those TikTokers out there, sea shanties were a big COVID theme for a while. So people were singing along to sea shanties. So I think that some Gen Z folks who might have ended up in the audience would have been delighted by such an addition, and it would have been a new way into a play like The Hairy Ape. And last but certainly not least, we go to Sheila Garvey's review of the Hartford Stage Company's Wilderness. And this actually reopened their theater after being closed for COVID for, a year or so. And she talks a lot about what it means to open with this particular play and why choose this one. This is the one O'Neill comedy that people know, and not the normal choice. So it's really fascinating, and she puts it in great context, and it sounds like it was a really interesting gamble, and one that I think paid off. So that is the wonderful world of performance here in the Eugene O'Neill review. As you can tell, all of these reviews are also really touching on important points about a variety of different responses to performing in times of a pandemic. So that is another interesting aspect of looking at them all together. But now we will return once again to our fearless leader, Alex Pettit. Take it away.
Well, I'm back after all. And darn, it's getting cold up here in Minnesota already. Thanks, Bess. Thanks, Zander. And thanks as always to the Brain Trust, Eric and Allie. Perhaps incongruously, to invoke John Dryden on Chaucer's prologue to the Canterbury Tales, here is God's Plenty. Wow, that's a lot of interesting material. Here's what I want our readers to feel after they put down every issue. I wish I'd seen that production. I'm looking forward to seeing Eric's filmed version. I'm going to order that book from my local independent bookstore. And always, I hadn't thought of that. Well, that's all for this semiennial. We all hope you enjoy the next issue, and I'm looking forward to learning your thoughts on what we're doing and how we're doing it. Thank you so much.